الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد, we continue with the discussion relating to the world within, which is the series of majalis or the spiritual gatherings of the Grand Mufti of Pakistan, Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Ali, which he had delivered to a group of eager individuals who wanted to learn regarding the world within and the various conditions of the hearts. So, thus far, quite a lot of explanation went into what constitutes the human being, and that there is the outer part and then there's the inner part. And on the inner side, there are certain deeds as there are outer deeds, and a list of the desirable inner deeds were mentioned, and also a list of the undesirable inner deeds were mentioned. Thereafter, the question arises that how does one develop these desirable inner deeds, and how does one save oneself from the undesirable inner deeds? So there are various ways whereby this can be achieved. And in this respect, Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah Ali, the great scholar of Islam, had mentioned 4 methods whereby the spiritual well-being, the spiritual purification from the evil qualities, and adornment of the beautiful qualities can be achieved. And there he mentioned 4 such approaches or methods. The first method is to find a spiritual mentor, a guide, and to give one's hand in his hand and to follow the path as shown by him. This is the easiest and the most efficient and the fastest method of acquiring this spiritual well-being. However, Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Ali mentioned some satanic misgivings of the people in this regard, and this is how people are deprived because of the satanic misgivings. And the primary satanic misgiving is that there isn't any such people to be found in today's world, or otherwise, if they are found, then they're not of the caliber of the great people of the past. So the moment Shaitan whispers this into a person's heart, he tries to drive a person away and discourages a person from acquiring the companionship of a spiritual guide, and a person spends the rest of his life deprived. So therefore, one should be very careful of falling into the trap of the shaitan. And then Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Ali says that anyone who's going to look for men like Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali, or Junaid Baghdadi, Shibli, Maruf Karhi, Zunun Misri, Abdul Qadir Jilani, Rahmatullah Ali Majma'in, then he has these lofty ideas in his mind, surely he will be deprived. Because where would you find people of that caliber in this day and age? However, if one tries to find someone fulfilling the minimum requirements of a spiritual guide, then he will easily find such people who have attained spiritual rectitude. And how does one recognize a spiritual guide? Then Mufti Shafi Sahib Rahmatullah Ali mentions 5 things whereby a person can recognize who is a spiritual guide. Number 1, basic knowledge of Islam. That is enough to fulfill one's obligation or one's religious duties and abstaining from the prohibitions. That's the first requirement. Sufficient knowledge. Does not say that such a person has to be a sheikh, an alim, a mufti, a jurist, a faqih. It doesn't say that. Hence, we can find a person who's not an alim too, but he's got the basic knowledge, so therefore he can qualify. Number two, being regular in the observation of one's religious duties, not neglecting the farz and wajib and the sunnat muakkada, and abstaining from unlawful things, and immediately repenting in case one commits a mistake. So following the rules of the Sharia, following the Sunnah to the best of one's ability, and where one falters, then a person repents. So this is the second thing, knowledge, and we could say the second thing is practice. The third thing is keeping oneself engaged in divine remembrance, whether this consists of various tasbihat, awrad, etc., and imparting sermons or writing concerning any religious topic. So therefore, the third thing is that such a person must himself be involved in the zikr and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to at least a basic minimum requirement of the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we will say the first is ilm, the second is amal, and the third is zikr. And number four, this person should be having permission from a shaykh who himself has attained spiritual rectitude to counsel and instruct others with regard to reformation of the inner state. So this person must also have permission, and he must have authorization, so to say, from somebody who has already been authorized by someone above him, and so on and so on. It must be an unbroken chain going right up to Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Hassan Basri, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, right up to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then he is part of an authentic chain. We can't just suddenly out of nowhere become a spiritual guide. As our Shaykh Rahmatullah used to say, La ta'khudu baba man la baba lahu. Don't make that person your baba, meaning your spiritual father, who himself doesn't have a spiritual father. So he was born out of nowhere. He's got no father. So how can he become your father when he himself does not have a spiritual father? So therefore, it is very important that this condition has to be met, that he must be authorized, which is called khilafah, that a sheikh with whom he has spent time, after a period of time, finds that now this person has got the basics that are necessary for him to be a guide to others. So he confers upon him what is called khilafah, and this person is now authorized. He has got authorization or accreditation, whatever fancy words you want to use. He's got spiritual accreditation now to be a guide unto others. So that's the fourth requirement. And the fifth requirement is that anyone who spends some time in the company of this person finds an inclination to the hereafter and a disinclination to this world and the frivolous things of this world, then that is a sign also of this person being spiritually accomplished. Then, if anyone fulfills these 5 criteria, such a person shall suffice as a spiritual guide or a spiritual mentor. And if one happens to find several men matching this description, then one should attach oneself to the one with whom he feels the most amount of attraction, or he feels the most amount of affinity. And our Shaykh Rahmatullah used to give a beautiful example that your blood group, your spiritual blood group must match his spiritual blood group. Because even if you take blood from a donor whose blood is healthy, you need transfusion. So you're taking blood from somebody whose blood is healthy, but his blood group doesn't match your blood group, there'll be rejection. The body will reject that blood. So here also, there must be a spiritual matching of the blood groups. Therefore, you have to have what is called munasabat. This is the word that is used, munasabat. So we could say this is the sixth condition. Mufti Shafiza mentioned 5, and he also mentioned this, maybe not as a condition, I'd say it should be the sixth condition, that you should link yourself with somebody with whom you have got munasaba and with whom you have got some spiritual affinity. Then you should connect yourself with such a person, because then you will get maximum benefit. Otherwise, if the blood groups are not matching, there will be rejection. You'll be sitting with in the company of the spiritual mentor, but you won't be taking benefit. So there's no use forcing yourself, because you're not benefiting. Your heart is not opening up. The heart is not opening up. So therefore, the mashayikh of the past used to say to those that linked themselves up, if they found that after a while the person is not benefiting, then they would say to him, "Bhai, looks like you are going to be better off going to find another sheikh and connect yourself with the sheikh with whom your temperament is aligned," using all kinds of phrases and terminology. Your temperament or your disposition is, aligned to this person's disposition and temperament. So therefore, you can go and connect yourself with such a person. Because the idea is to find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to get the spiritual benefit and the spiritual rectification and the removal of all spiritual maladies, and to become spiritually healthy and well. And that can only be achieved when you are taking the maximum benefit from your spiritual guide or your spiritual doctor. So in the past, the mashayikh also used to gauge from the person, I mentioned this before, I'll repeat it, that they used to gauge from the people who came to them too, that whether there will be an alignment in the temperaments or not. One sheikh, for example, used to invite those that came to a meal. So how they travel to come and join him and link up to him. So he would serve the meal and he would put, some curry and some bread or roti, and then he'll say, "Bismillah, eat." And then he will observe the person's eating habits. Now, if you find that this person ate haphazardly, he wasn't eating meticulously and consciously, but he was eating, haphazardly, that he dished out the curry, but before he could finish the curry, the bread got finished. So that means that there's imbalance in his temperament, because he should have paced himself and spaced himself in such a way that he should have had the bread in such a way that it suffices to finish the curry. Or if he finished the curry but pieces of bread were still left behind, then he would see that this person has got an imbalance in his temperament, and he would tell this person after the meals and all was over, "Brother, look here, I don't think you and I are going to click." There's another term, you're not going to click. So you know what? Rather, you go look for another spiritual guide where you will be able to click with this person. So this is just an example. That was because the people were perfection. They were people of Kamal and perfection in that era and that time. This is not that age. This age is an age of decline. And nooks, what is called nooks is, decline and basically a downward spiral and trend. So we can't apply all these things in this day and age. In this day and age, if there is some slight connection, then that is enough. That is sufficient. That is more than enough. Nevertheless, Imam Ghazali Rahmatullahi mentions 4 ways of the rectification, spiritual, reformation and spiritual health and recovery and well-being. So the one is you have a spiritual guide. that is the topmost and the superior way, and the fastest and efficient way, and easiest way. But let's say you don't want to go on that route. Then he mentions three other ways. Number two, if one could not succeed in finding a spiritual mentor who fulfills the above criteria, then according to Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah alayhi, such a person should turn to any sincere and well-wishing friend of his, asking him that, look at my faults and what mistakes you can find in me, what mistakes are you perceiving in me. Once you find these faults, then out of kindness, please point out these mistakes of mine, and so that I can rectify these weaknesses. Whatever you will point out to me, I will work towards rectifying it. So he takes a spiritual buddy, or what we could call, uh, a spiritual a sparring partner. That this person is going to be, he will strengthen him and he will strengthen him, and they will strengthen each other. They'll see their weak points, they will point out those weak points, and they will work towards strengthening those areas of weakness. So this is also a way, but obviously it's not that easy in this day and age to find such people, and people who are so observant, people who are so astute, people who are so patient, people who are so wise, people who are so compassionate and kind. By the time you find someone, you might as well find a sheikh. Because to find such people in this day and age is pretty rare. But let's say that you couldn't, and you did find a good companion or a friend like that, then make that person like your spiritual buddy. And now he will guide you, and he will help you, and you will help him. Right? So you start pointing out the faults. And that's why I say it's a rare thing, because in this day and age, the moment somebody starts pointing out your faults, you become defensive. No, but look at my circumstances, and because of the situation, and I'm in the, look at my background. Try to understand it from my point of view. Now he's finding justification. The man is trying to help him. He's looking for justification. Where is that going to help? How is that going to become? So he must be open-hearted in accepting the criticism that is leveled against him. And he must have a sincere intention of taking it on board and using it for his reformation and rectification. Then, inshallah, it will benefit. So, for example, once Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu approached Salman Farsi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and he told him, "Oh, my brother, tell me what weakness you see." Salman Farsi radiallahu ta'ala anhu was first reluctant to reply. And we can understand he must have been very overawed by the strong personality of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a lion of Allah. Who could tell him, "Oh, Umar, you got this fault and that fault." But out of respect for him, Salman Farsi radiallahu ta'ala anhu felt that Umar is so senior, I'm junior, what am I going to tell him about his faults? But when Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala insisted, he told him, "I perceive two weaknesses in you. The first is that there is more than one dish on your table. And the second, and such was not the habit of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The second is that you keep one suit of clothes or clothing above your requirements. You wear one at night and you wear the other one during the day. You got one extra set of clothes and you got one extra dish of food on your table." They were of that caliber. You can't apply that in this day and age. You invite it to somebody's house and you say, "Brother, hey, you're doing a very wrong thing. Why you got dal and then you got rice? Either you have rice or you have dal." This is giving an example, humorous example, but so Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu replied, "Don't worry, these two shall be remedied right now, inshallah." I'll fix it up right now. From now onwards, that's it. One dish, one set of clothing. So, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu and all other pious ancestors of this ummah were very concerned regarding any weakness of character, and they would waste no time in remedying the same. Once a foreign delegation came to meet Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in order to honor the guests, the place of assembly was duly made up and decorated. As soon as the formalities were over, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu picked up a leather bag, went to a well, fetched water, and brought it to an old woman living in his neighborhood. People asked him why he did so. He replied that due to the arrival of the foreign delegation, it was necessary to make the court look a bit nice and splendid. Therefore, I was worried that this display of pomp and splendor might cause me to develop pride. Therefore, I had to do something to humble myself. Ya Allah, look at how they were. Look at how they were. He didn't decorate the court for himself, for the guests, so they can go back with a good impression. But immediately after that, to rectify his condition, he did something so that no trace of pride can remain. He went and in front of everybody, he goes and takes a water bag, he's filling it. The whole population is watching Amirul Mu'minin now. He's filling the water, he's carrying the water bag, he's going to the lady's house, he's serving the lady with the water. This is how these people were. This was a peculiarity of the noble companions and pious predecessors of the Ummah, that they would sympathetically point out each other's weaknesses and shortcomings without scorning or hurting each other's feelings. Nowadays, finding friends like this is not easy. It's not easy. If so-called friends perceive a vice in someone, they will tell the whole world about it, but not the person concerned. Such people cannot be considered as friends. One should make sure to befriend only such people who are really sincere and who are pious and who are compassionate and who can keep these things confidential. Then you can make such a person as a friend. So now we come to the third way and then the fourth way of spiritual rectification that Imam Ghazali prescribed. So the second one is to have a spiritual buddy. A spiritual mentor, number one. Number two, a spiritual buddy. Now the third one is even more difficult, much more difficult. To reform oneself with the help of one's enemies, one's adversaries. This may be done by carefully listening to what kind of evil traits and wrongs a person has been accused of. People are accusing you, they maligning you, they demeaning you, they degrading you. Now you're taking everything and you're analyzing it and you're saying, okay, you know what, they are saying this about me, they are saying this, yeah, I've got this fault, I've got that fault, I need to put this right, I need to put that right. So he's taking rectification from his enemies' opinions and words. They are obviously not sincere. In most cases, they may be lying and exaggerating, but he's still not dismissing it. He's still taking it for what it's worth. Thereafter, one ought to do some introspection and analyze one's inner state of being in order to determine how many of these accusations are true and how many of these vices really exist. Then one should concern oneself with the elimination of those vices. This is what the pious, righteous, saintly personalities of the past used to do. An incident comes to mind of Imam Rabbani, Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, Rahmatullah alayhi. What a great personality he was. There was an alim, I won't mention his name, although it's mentioned in the Kitab, of that time and age, who used to attack Maulana Rashid Ahmad Gangohi, Rahmatullah alayhi, from time to time, regularly demeaning him, degrading him, using very vulgar language, foul language, pamphlets and writings and booklets used to be published against Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi, and used to send poison pen letters to Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah alayhi, like very harsh criticism and condemnation of everything that he used to do. And Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah used to read his letters, used to reflect on it, used to see what they're saying, what part of it is correct, what is not correct. If there was anything correct, then he would work towards rectification of it. So, toward the latter part of his life, he had lost his eyesight. And as a result of that, he could not read any more letters and all that correspondence that came. So one day out of the blue, he addressed Maulana Yahya Sahib, who was the father of Sheikh Zakaria, and he was Maulana Gangohi's khas khadim and special attendant. He said, Maulana Yahya, बहुत दिन हो गए हमारे दोस्तों ने हमको याद करना छोड़ दिया. A lot of days have passed, our friends have forgotten about us now. No more poison letters coming, no more articles, no more attacks coming on us. So, Maulana Yahya said, Hazrat, these letters are still coming all the time, but we don't have the courage to read it out to you because it's so vulgar that we can't even bring these words on our tongue. Some of these comprise the most vulgar abuses, malicious propaganda, and scandalous accusations. And Maulana Yahya did not find it easy to read them out to his Shaykh, Maulana Gangohi Rahmatullah Alayhi. He therefore did not read out his letters. Then Hazrat Gangohi asked him, Maulana Yahya, what's the matter? Do our friends no longer remember us? Since quite some time I have not received any letters or any pamphlets. So Maulana Yahya replied, he said, Hazrat, we have received several of these pamphlets, but when I went through them, I found they contained nothing but abuses and allegations. So I thought, why should I cause you anguish by reading them out to you? Allah Akbar. Look at their piety, look at their humbleness, look at their sincerity. These were the true friends of Allah. These were the true awliya of this ummah. Maulana Gangohi said to him, to Maulana Yahya, don't do that. Read out to me whatever pamphlet we receive. I want to hear what they write. Because there may be something in there which is true about whatever is said regarding me, so that I can correct myself, I can rectify myself. If it's not true, we won't worry about it. But if it's true, then why should we ignore it? We should take the part that is correct and let's use that to rectify ourselves and reform ourselves. What noble souls they were. What heights of humility they had reached and sincerity. If it is us, we'll say, you know, this person wrote this or this person said this. There's 10 things about this person that I can write and I will write. And I will respond and I will say this and I will say that. We saw my father, I'll say his grandfather too. This is our attitude, you know. But those friends of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were very different. They were so detached from their ego. Affected. In fact, this great wali of Allah, Imam Rabbani, one of our very great highest predecessors of the ulama, they were. He used to, once his Shaykh Haji Abdullah Rahmatullah Ali wrote to him, and he said, Maulana, long time no letter has come from you informing about your spiritual state. So Gangohi replied to him and said that, Hazrat, I feel so embarrassed and ashamed. I am a person who doesn't have any spiritual state. That is my state, that is my condition. The only thing I can say about my spiritual state for now is that praises and condemnation are equal in my eyes. The one who praises me and the one who condemns me are equal in my eyes. Neither of them affect me in any way. I am not in any way elated by the praises of anyone, nor am I in any way deflated or dejected by the criticism and condemnation of anyone. But about them, मेरी नजरों में बराबर है. The praise and condemnation are equal in my eyes. Because their gaze was on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they knew Allah is the ultimate in terms of perfection. So no matter what perfection we acquire, we are still defective fully. And so if somebody says we are defective, so what wrong did they do? And if somebody praised us, in actual fact, what our praise are we worthy of? They praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was their lofty spiritual stations that they achieved. So this was the third method. And as I said, it's not easy and it's not very common. It's not a very common thing to find. But yes, if a person does find what we would call a spiritual adversary now to make your Islam. So you got a spiritual mentor, you got a spiritual buddy, and now you have a spiritual adversary or a spiritual enemy to make your Islam, to reform you. And then the fourth method, whenever one perceives some evil or objectionable trait in oneself, one ought to do some introspection whether such a weakness exists and to what extent. And if there is any apprehension, then one should immediately attempt to correct oneself. This too is a method through which one can reform oneself. And as a matter of fact, one ought to employ all of the above methods, especially the first one, according to one's best ability. Subhanallah. What a beautiful sentence at the end of this passage that Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah Alayhi and Mufti Shabisa brings here. Very beautiful observation. So the fourth method is through introspection. You keep on pondering and thinking about your shortcomings and weaknesses, and you say, no, this is not right. I'm on the wrong track. I got the wrong practice. I'm committing the sin. It's haram. It's not permissible. It's not allowed. I have to see how I can stop it. I have to see how I can fix it. I have to see how I can reform it. So this is introspection, which is called muhasabah. So at the end, beautiful statement is made that, as a matter of fact, one ought to employ all four of the above methods, especially the first one according to one's best ability. All four methods, even if you want to share, you can still have a spiritual buddy too. In other words, somebody who on the side, and let me tell you all something now which is very important for you to listen to. Your best spiritual buddy is your wife. She is a share bigger than your share also. Then she will fix every fault in you, and she'll find everything that you're doing wrong, and she'll point it out to you. And a true man is the one who will listen to all of these things. That you can have. Your first mentor, the biggest spiritual buddy is the wife. Because she knows your ins and outs. She knows you back and front, in and out. You are in front of her day and night, in open and in public and in secret. You are there with her day and night. So who knows you better? Who knows you better? She knows you in and out. So therefore, when she will tell you something, then take her as your spiritual buddy or your spiritual adversary. It's up to you. It's up to you, whichever way you have to look at it. And listen and see what you can do about fixing your condition, what you can do about rectifying yourself. There was a person that, used to tell his father and mother, hey, you know what, if you see anything wrong in me, you must tell me. They said, don't worry. You just now, your day is coming when your nikah will take place. You won't have to tell you one word after that. You'll hear everything from your wife. She will analyze you in and out. And she will fix your faults up by rectifying and by mentioning all your shortcomings. So, therefore, there is this method also of your spiritual guide, that's the best and the highest, but you can also have spiritual buddy, and could have adversaries too, and they might find fault in you, they might condemn you, criticize you. So then look at it objectively and see what can be taken out of it, and reject the rest of it, and dismiss the rest of it. And the fourth thing is for you to do your own introspection. As Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned in one narration, Istafti qalba, ask your heart for the fatwa. Ask your heart. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong? Your heart, if it is a heart that is not diseased and very spiritually ill, will give you the correct answer. And your heart will tell you, no, what you're doing is not right. So then, now, after doing this introspection, you work towards the correction of your condition. So now, inshallah, I will just briefly touch on the first of the spiritual maladies or sicknesses that afflict man, and that is the following of base desires, the following of desires. Whether it is the desire of food, whether it is a desire of name, fame, whether it is a desire for wealth, whether it is a desire for, lust, a desire towards a person who is haram for you to have any interaction with. All these things constitute what is called hawa in Arabic, hawa. In English, unlawful desires. Not lawful, unlawful desires in Arabic, which is called hawa. You know that famous poetry, hawa o hirs wala dil badal de. Hawa o hirs, hawa, desires, unlawful desires. And hirs, greed. So this is that biggest of the spiritual maladies, which is the unlawful desires. If we can kill those unlawful desires and we can curtail those unlawful desires, then 90% we have achieved spiritual purification and spiritual rectification. But it is the pursuing and following of the desires that actually causes the destruction of a person. And the desires stem primarily from the nafs. The nafs. And that is why we have to fight the nafs. The nafs has to be fought. Because the desires stem from the nafs. They emanate from the nafs. So we have to keep on fighting the desires of the nafs. And that is when a person will be successful. So, this is what is called hawa, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has condemned this practice of following of unlawful desires in the Quran. Ara'ayta man ittakhadha ilahahu hawa. Do you see that person who made his unlawful desires his ilah, his God? He worships his unlawful desires. That he wants to satisfy and fulfill his unlawful desires in every way. So he has made it like his ilah. Like how he has to please his Allah, he has to please his unlawful desires. This is how Quran is condemned, the following of hawa. And many other places in the Quran, the word hawa is used. وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ. This person followed his desire, so his example is like that of a dog. And the word hawa is used in Quran
to depict the unlawful desires of man. Now, the opposite of hawa is huda. Hawa and huda. Huda is guidance, the path of hidayat, guidance. And how does one fight this unlawful desires is hawa? Then for that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a weapon, a very powerful weapon to fight and crush this hawa and these unlawful desires. And that weapon which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us is the weapon of mujahada. Mujahada. Fighting the desires, curbing the desires, controlling the desires, subduing these desires. This is what is called mujahada. So the only way to subdue these desires is through mujahada. That whenever any such desire arises, you crush this desire, you fight this desire, you ward this desire off. You don't allow this desire to take, to manifest itself before it can lead you to the action of the satisfaction or the fulfillment of that unlawful desire. You fight it. That is what is called mujahada. And there's two types of mujahada, which is to subdue this hawa. One is what is obligatory and compulsory, that is that every haram and unlawful desire, you've got to use that mujahada to overcome it. Otherwise, you're going to go straight down into the pathway of haram and sin. And the second type of mujahada is not farz or not compulsory, but it helps you to develop the first type of mujahada. And that is the 4 categories of mujahada that have been mentioned by the mashayikh. And that is qillatul ta'am, qillatul kalam, qillatul manam, qillatul ikhtilati ma'al anam. 4. These 4 mujahadas are not compulsory. They are recommended, but they will help you to strengthen the compulsory mujahada, and it will help you to fight the unlawful desires of the nafs. So these 4, qillatul ta'am is to reduce your eating, qillatul manam to reduce your sleeping, qillatul kalam to reduce your speaking, and qillatul ikhtilat ma'al anam, you're reducing your associating. So reducing your eating, your sleeping, your talking or speaking, and your associating. If you master these 4 modes of mujahada that are recommendatory or nafil, then inshallah you will develop the strength of the farz mujahada, which is to crush the unlawful desire and not allow the unlawful desire to be fulfilled. Then a person is now on the highway of spiritual advancement. Because after this, there's no stopping this person. He will be flying on that highway, he will be speeding on the highway towards spiritual elevation and spiritual heights. So inshallah, we shall continue this discussion along these lines, inshallah ta'ala. And it is not complex, it's not difficult, it's quite easy to understand these things if we follow it carefully. Inshallah, once we understand these things properly, then this is that knowledge that is power. As it is said, knowledge is light and knowledge is power. It will give us the power. This knowledge is so important that this knowledge is that power, that if you have this power, then this power is far greater than all the other sciences and all the other knowledges in this world, because this is the spiritual knowledge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq, hidayat and guidance. Recite Durood Sharif. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. اللهم انا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. اللهم انت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك يا ذا الجلال والاكرام. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم طهر قلوبنا من النفاق وأعمالنا من الرياء وألسنتنا من الكذب وأعيننا من الخيانة، فإنك تعلم خائنة الأعين وما تخفي الصدور. اللهم أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. اللهم انصر المظلومين في كل مكان، خاصة في غزة وفلسطين. اللهم اطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. اللهم عجل بنصرهم وارزقهم الفتح المبين. اللهم قوهم وانصرهم. اللهم دمر أعداءهم أعداء الدين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.